Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Hey, welcome friends to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. This is your host, Darren. And I have a very special guest on today's show, Mr. A.M. Kannan, who is the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the Indian School of Business. And we're going to be talking about the Postgraduate Program in Management, also known as the PGP program. And this is a very special show for me because this is the first Indian business school we've had on the Touch MBA podcast. And, you know, ISB, as it's known, has been really top ranked for the past couple of years by Financial Times. And what I'd really like to do in this podcast is get behind those great rankings and learn much more about what the ISB is all about and what really makes it special. So I'd just really like to thank you, Mr. Kannan, for joining the show today. Thank you for coming on.
Welcome. I am completely enjoying this.
Okay, great.
I'd love to do this.
Yes. And Mr. Kannan, can you please give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself and what your background was before coming to the Indian School of Business?
Right. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering back in 1977 and went on to do my MBA in 1980. Worked for 3 years with MBA from the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. And I graduated in 82 from my B school. Post that, I have worked in predominantly operations area for close to 20 years, so till 2002. And two major companies I worked for. One was Hindustan Unilever, which is the Indian arm of Unilever, and the other was Tetra Pak. They have an operations in India. So those was 20 years of absolute top flight operations experience. And then I taught in a B school for about 4 years, till 2006 in Hyderabad. And a classmate of mine happens to be in ISB, and I happened to run into him in ISB, and he said, "Why can't you come over?" And that's how I moved into ISB sometime in 2005-06, and I've been there since. And I have been in the admissions. I've been director of admissions for the last 4 years. And prior to that, I spent about 3 years in the careers. So I've straddled both sides. I've been the careers as well as the admissions.
Well, that's great. Then you're the perfect person for us to talk to about ISB because you have that length of experience in admissions and career services. So just really excited to have you on the show, and thank you so much for joining us. So let's get straight into the heart of what we'd like to talk about and what makes the Indian School of Business PGP program unique from other top MBA programs in the world.
Okay, from an Indian standpoint, if you look at, we were the first to introduce a one-year program in India, and there were lots of others in India, but we were the very first to do so in India. And I'm just setting the context here, because in India, typically people went to a B school straight out of college, no experience. And we were the first to say, no, experience is essential before you can do an MBA. So that's another thing. So we managed to have, unlike most other Indian B schools, benchmarked ourselves on foreign B schools, which typically have people getting into an MBA program after some working for some time. So our average work experience in the class is about 5 years and ranges from 2 to 15, 20 years. So that's quite wide, number one. The second one is our faculty model. I mean, that is something that we are very, very unique across the globe. We have a very strong strength of resident faculty, about 52 as we count now, and it has been ramping up over time. And we also get about close to 100 to 110 visiting faculty who also teach. And the visiting faculty typically come from our partner schools, which are, as you might know, Wharton, Kellogg, London Business School, MIT, Sloan and Fletcher. So we get a lot of faculty from these schools, plus a lot of other schools as well, like UC Berkeley, UCLA, NYU Stern, etc., etc. So there are a whole lot of top class faculty. So therefore, that's one of the unique things about us. So as far as the student is concerned, he is going to get the best faculty anywhere that he can find. So from a learning standpoint, I think we are very, very unique. And of course, the other thing is we are completely residential. So it is mandatory for all students, unlike international schools where people could stay outside of campus, but here everybody stays on campus. So that kind of what we have found is that enhances overall learning because people are learning from each other outside of the classroom all the time, be it as a study group, be it just ordinary discussions over a cup of tea, be it organizing events. So everything is a learning experience. Okay. So to that extent, when people go out at the end of 1 year, they come out with a whole lot more shared knowledge. They share their knowledge, shared learning, and therefore the ability to perform much better once they are in the job market.
And is the PGP regarded similarly to an MBA degree? Because I know you guys are ranked by Financial Times, but you're called the postgraduate program in management. So could you explain the difference if there is any?
Actually, it's actually equivalent to an MBA program. There's no difference as far as the curriculum content is concerned, the depth is concerned, the breadth is concerned. There is no difference. The only reason why we are calling ourselves a PGP program is because there are Indian regulations where only full-fledged universities can award degrees as per Indian law, and we are not a university. And therefore,
I see.
The workaround, it's a certificate program. It's a degree program equivalent to a degree, and we award a PGP. That's only because of an Indian law which says that only recognized universities can award degrees. As far as the course curriculum, everything is concerned, and as far as recruiters are concerned.
Exactly. That's where I was about to get to.
Yeah.
Okay, so they recognize it as an MBA degree.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you talked about the campus and how it is a residential 1-year program. I noticed that ISB has campuses on both Hyderabad and Mohali, I believe.
Mohali. It's in Mohali.
Mohali. And
Mohali.
So where do half the students on one campus and the other half students on the other campus, or where are most of the students located?
Okay, the split is at the moment 500. We have a total class size of 770. Out of this, 560 will be in Hyderabad, 210 will be in Mohali. Essentially, we try to have each class is split into sections. Okay, each section is comprising of 70 students. So we have 8 sections in Hyderabad, 3 sections in Mohali at the moment.
And I know that your Hyderabad campus is famous for being, just this beautiful, sprawling green campus. But is there an advantage to going to that campus versus the Mohali campus?
It's absolutely the same. There is no difference between two campuses. Yes, the architecture would be different, the size would be different. Yes, this is about 230 acres. Well, that will be about 75 acres. I think that's the only difference. When it comes to the curriculum, the way, the pedagogy, the way it is delivered, there is absolutely no difference between the electives available on both sides. There are no differences between the two campuses. And in fact, we take great pains to make sure that the quality of students on both sides are exactly the same. So if you have a look at the average GMAT score on both sides, it will be the same. The gender diversity will be the same. The number of people with engineering backgrounds on both sides in proportion will be the same. Down to the fact that if you say how many people from, let's say the percentage of people from an IT services background, on this side, that side will be the same. Number of doctors here and there will be the same. I mean, in proportion. 560 to that proportion. If you draw a pie chart of this class and a pie chart of Mohali, those pie charts will look exactly the same.
Crystal clear. And those two cohorts get to interact with each other as well?
They do, because what we also do is we have an intercampus exchange our entire program is split into 8 terms. There are 4 core terms where everybody goes through the same, and then 4 elective terms. So at the end of the second term, people can move from one campus to the other. Okay, and similarly, depending on the kind of electives you end up taking, you can also move between campuses between term 5 and 8. So a lot of people end up going from one campus to the other.
Got it. And you mentioned that this most recent class has about 770 students, and I've seen that each year your class has been getting a little bit bigger, from 422 students in 2008 to now, which is 770. Does ISB plan to grow the class size in the future, or keep it at a similar size?
We are going to be keeping it at least for the next couple of years, we are going to be at about 770 or thereabouts. I mean, I don't think we're going to be increasing substantially. Yes, we target 770, we might get a few percent up or down, right? So you can't get exactly 770 each year. So 770 might go to 780, 775, that kind of, but the ballpark is going to be remaining at 770 for some more time.
And that is a huge number for an MBA program that was started, 10, 12 years ago, which is really,
Absolutely.
really amazing. So could you talk to us about any new exciting developments that have happened recently with the program?
Okay, the thing that has helped us so far is, India actually is a huge market for MBA, and there has been a continuous increase in demand, and therefore we've just kind of met that demand. So there's nothing, and we have also managed to keep the applications numbers going up so that our selectivity is about the same, and the quality of the class has kind of kept pace with the increase in numbers. Okay. The one exciting thing that's going to be happening now is the fact that from next year, the new kind of curriculum is going to be kicking in. I might not be able to give too many details about it, but there are a lot of interesting thoughts that are coming up, and we would be implementing that. So the Senior Associate Dean of Academics is someone who is fully involved in that, and he'll be making that announcement shortly, what the changes are.
We'll have to have you on the podcast again after those changes are made so we can learn more about them.
Sure. I'd love to do that. I'd love to get back to you on that details. I'm not able to give it to you right now.
Sure. Okay. And so one trend that applicants to ISB might have seen is that the rankings, even though you're still, top 30 program in the world, have been dropping the last 3 years. So you were 13 in 2011, 20 in 2012, and 34 this year. And even though that's still a very enviable ranking for a school that is so young, could you explain why you might have fallen a little bit in the rankings?
Okay, a couple of things. Before I talk about the rankings itself, what we have been doing, we've been improving every year. We do a curriculum review every 5 years. We've been doing that, changing the curriculum to meet the current requirements. In addition, individual courses are kind of tweaked around every alternate year, so that also is relevant to what students need. If you look at from an Indian salaries perspective, that has also been kind of on the increase. If you look at from 2018 to 8 to now, we have been increasing. So since we got ranked, so from an Indian standpoint, we're doing well. Okay, the number of students placed at the end of 3 months on graduation has been consistently at the same level in spite of the increase in class sizes. Okay, we were 440, then we went to 560, we are now 770. So if you see the percentage people placed at the end of with jobs at the end of 3 months post graduation, that percentage is also being the same, which essentially means that our ability to reach out to recruiters has been has actually improved over a period of time, because we now have placed 770 as against 440, right? So if you look at these basic parameters, okay, I think we have done much better than what we were doing when we were ranked 20 or maybe ranked even 30. But there are other issues. If you look at the FT itself, okay, a major component of their ranking is salaries, and salaries which is kind of converted to equivalent dollar term, purchasing power parity terms. One of the things in the last 4 years that has happened in the Indian currency it's really devalued something like close to 40%. Okay, I remember we were at about 45 rupees to a dollar. Okay, at that point in time, we are 62 rupees to a dollar today. And how that's going to impact the ranking this year, I'm not going to be able to comment about it. But what I can assure you is what you get in the program has not changed.
And what is that placement rate you mentioned that has stayed relatively consistent?
More than 96% of our graduates
Wow,
get
that's
placed
fantastic
at the
rate.
end of the year. So we have been very, very consistent on that. And the outcomes on that has also been very consistent. So, and we still have all the top recruiters continuing to come and recruiting students from us.
Well, I really appreciate, that just clear, direct answer to a tough question, I'm sure, for any school. And you mentioned that the faculty at ISB is really unique because you have, 100 visiting professors from some of the top business schools in the world, along with your local professors there. But what other reason would there be for an international, non-Indian candidate to get their MBA at ISB?
Okay, one of the things is, one of the unique things that they will get at the ISB is a very strong perspective on emerging markets issues. And that's kind of very, very different perspective from what you get, let's say, in a established market kind of a perspective. How do emerging markets behave? India is I've been in an emerging market for quite some time, and we have a huge bottom of the pyramid issues in our country, okay? And that's something that they can take away. And yes, I admit upfront, the number of truly international students are not very high in ISB, but those who have come, okay, have done a very good job. I mean, they've gone back with a feeling that they've got what they wanted. And by the way, there are at least 4 of them I know who have decided to stay back in India and work in India. There was a class of 10, Thomas Island. He's decided to stay back. He funds venture. He started a fund, and he's kind of funding ventures which are at the delivery end, small agri businesses, and so on and so forth. So he has set up a fund. Back in 2003, we had 2003 or 2002, we had Joe Hopper, who took up an opportunity in ISB itself for some time, and now he has gone out and set up his own learning kind of a venture in Gurgaon, Delhi area. And we have a couple of Spanish students who have come back to India and working in Spanish companies which are operating out of India. So quite a few of them have actually decided to come back to India to pursue careers. So, I mean, the numbers are not very high. Let me be very, very honest about it. Okay, but those who have seem to have liked what they got.
Yeah, because usually I think that number has been about 2 to 3%, right, of your class has an international passport, non-Indian passport. But what would you say to those candidates? I mean, because so much of the way business schools market themselves these days is that we give you this really international experience and you're going to meet people from, 50 countries. So what would you say to candidates who are maybe concerned about the diversity element of coming to ISB when, there are a lot of Indian candidates in each class and most of them have engineering backgrounds?
Yes, if you look at the way the education system in India works, a lot of bright young students who graduate from school going for an engineering degree. So at the end of 5 years, when they're ready to apply to a B school, you will have a lot of engineers out there. Notwithstanding that, we have an engineering, non-engineering ratio about 70-30 at this point, 75-25, 70-30. That's the kind of ballpark that we've really had. Having said that, I mean, if you look at really diversity, what do you mean by diversity? I mean, international diversity, you can talk about, let's say, a Frenchman, a Belgian, over there in Europe. Each one is a different country, okay? India has 22 states. Each state talks a different language. Each state is as different as, let's say, France and Italy would be. They're all Indians, but a person from Maharashtra and a person from Bengal would not be able to talk to each other in any other language other than English or Hindi, which is kind of a connecting language between India. So if you look at diversity in that sense, okay, yes, they are all Indians, but they are as different as you can get in any other B school in terms of sheer diversity. Okay, 22 states, all states are represented in ISB, incidentally. Okay, you get a few from, yes, there are some dominant states, yes, but you will have people from across India. You will have people, and that itself is a mix. And the way industry works in different states is also different. The markets are different. If you get that understanding, that itself can be a huge learning in ISB. Yes, we don't have international diversity. I agree to that. Okay. And frankly, we've been just 10 years old. I mean, how do you expect us to really get international students in such a short time? We are working on it. As we go along, we keep getting more and more. So over the years, we will definitely start getting them.
Great. And I definitely want to come back to careers in India for international students, and we'll get to that later in the podcast. But if we could sort of switch our focus now to admissions, what type of candidate are you looking for?
Okay, there are a couple of things which are kind of mandatory. Okay, so yes, we do need a valid GMAT score. We need reasonably good academics at the undergraduate and school level, and an overall personality. See, the point is, we just don't go just by the GMAT score. It's just one component. The only advantage that the GMAT has is the fact that it's a common test and you can compare people across different disciplines with a common kind of a test. So it lends itself to an easy comparison between different candidates, but that's about it. Okay. But what we really want is people who have the potential to be leaders. I mean, that's one of the things that our vision statement is all about. It says we want to groom leaders for the future, both for India and abroad. So we are looking for people who have that spark, people who have shown initiative. I mean, what are the traits? At 5 years of experience, you're hardly likely to be in a leadership position, right? But leaders have certain traits. So they tend to take risks. So they have strong initiative and they see their initiatives through. They have people skills. So they are team workers, they manage teams, they can get consensus opinion around them, right? And lead people towards, even if it's 5 years, I mean, they would have taken initiative and made sure that that initiative is kind of seen to its logical end. So these are the kind of things that we are looking for, and we look for them in the essays, and the essay topics itself lend themselves to such interpretation, because one of the essay topics is what is so unique about you? What skills do you bring to the table that is unique and differentiated? Number one. The second thing that we do ask is, what have been your most significant achievements? And what have been the learning from these achievements? So we are not only interested in just the achievement per se. What has been the learning the person? So learnability is a key issue. People keep learning from their experiences. So we want to know whether that person can learn from experiences. And because if a person learns from experiences, he also has the ability to share those with others. So we do expect a lot of our students to share their experiences both in class and outside, so that the overall learning of the class as a whole goes up. So that's by and large what we are looking for. And of course, the evaluators kind of validate all that, because we ask them specific questions in the evaluation sheet. It's not an open-ended one. So we are asking them to compare their performance with their peer group. We are asking them what has been their strength and how have they demonstrated it. What are the kind of areas where they have shown maximum improvement, and how did they improve themselves in that area, and so on. So there are very, very specific questions we ask, and with each of these questions tend to validate all the other stuff that is there in the essays and the application.
I'm sure ISB places a lot of value on maturity as well, given that it's a one-year program. It's like you said, its roots really came from being a post-experience sort of MBA, right? And so you mentioned that, leadership is really at the heart of what you're looking for. Of course, they have to be academically capable to get through an intense one-year program. And you mentioned the essay questions, but could you give any advice on how to best express, your leadership potential? Like, for example, that question of what makes you unique, right? As a former admissions officer, I know that many people write their essays, oh, well, I'm unique just because of who I am. And, no one else has worked for this shipping company and this publishing company and this education company. I'm unique, right? But that's not always such a satisfying answer. So I was wondering if you had any tips for applicants about how they can really demonstrate those traits in an effective way.
Right. See, you put it there in your question itself. We are looking at traits. We are not looking at, say, I worked in this company, therefore I am unique. What's more, what do you do in that company? So the best way I would approach this kind of a question is, look at all your achievements where you have displayed different kinds of skills, right? Just list them down on a sheet of paper before you even attempt it. Just go through mentally what was your significant, how satisfying was each of those achievements, and how did you actually translate that idea into a action. And then look at the ones that are likely to have made the most impact. The chances are you would have really worked hard and kind of displayed over and beyond skills when you made that achievement. Talk about that in the essay. The chances are the essay will really come out well. So because it not only talks about your skill sets, it tells us how you have overcome. See, every time you go out of the way to do something that is unique, okay, there will be naysayers. There will be some persons who will say, no, this will not work. And those are challenges. How did you overcome them? How did you convince the naysayers to your side? So those are what we are really looking for is you go underneath the achievement. Just don't list out the achievement. I did this. If you can't, if you just list that out, it doesn't tell us what are the skills that you have displayed. You have to go to the list and you have to go to the challenges that you face. How did you overcome the challenges? That entire story gives a good impression of the candidate as a whole. And
I
that's
think
what we're looking for.
That is absolutely fantastic advice. And so, what was the story? What was the obstacle that you had to overcome, whether it was financial, people, whatever that challenge was, and show those skills. So I think that's really great advice. I noticed in terms of your deadlines that you have 2 rounds, 2 cycles, right? September 15th is one deadline, November 30th is the other, and you have an early entry option for those who have less than 2 years of work experience.
Right. Yeah, there is a deadline for foreign passport holders. The deadline is 15th of January. They can apply up till 15th of January.
Right. So for the international candidates who I think comprise, most of the audience that is listening to this podcast, would you advise them to apply earlier versus later? Do they have a better chance if they get their application in the fall than in January?
The way our admission process works, it really does it from an applicant standpoint to get an admission to the ISB. It doesn't matter when you apply, right? Because what happens really is, in the past, we have found that about 35% of all our applications comes in the cycle 1, that is 15 September, about 65% come in cycle 2. So what we have also done is we give out only about 35% of the total offers in cycle 1, 65 in cycle 2. But what we in addition do is we maintain a very large number of waitlists at the end of cycle 1, and that is merged with cycle 2. Okay, so that for what has never happened is somebody gets rejected in cycle 1, okay, and a person who's kind of quote unquote inferior to that person getting an admit in cycle 2, that has never happened. So from a standpoint of an applicant, it doesn't matter when you apply. However, there is one issue. For an international, for people who are abroad, the cycle 2 results are announced sometime in 15th of February, and our program starts April 15th, somewhere thereabouts, right? Transitioning from just 2 months of time to transition might not be enough time for them to transition. So for them, I would definitely advise them to apply in cycle 1, because then they have from November 15th to April 15th to transition back to India. So it's essentially a question of how much time they have to transition from, and if they need that additional time, it's better to apply in cycle 1. If those 2 months is adequate, cycle 2 is fine. But purely from a standpoint of getting an admit, it doesn't matter which cycle you apply to.
Crystal clear, and thank you for that clarification. And I'm sure you have many candidates extremely concerned about the GMAT score. So I know your average is 711, which is, great average, a very high average. Do you have a minimum score at ISB?
Okay, we actually don't have a minimum score, but what happens because of the entire process and the kind of weightages assigned to each of these, what really happens is it's extremely difficult for a person with less than 600 to actually make it to the class. So de facto, I would say, while we have had people occasionally less than 600 in the class, but majority of them are in the range 600 to 790. I would also say that your overall application also has to be good, and your interview also has to be good, because what happens really is people with very high GMAT score, like 780, 790, they end up taking the entire application very lightly.
Yes.
And, because they say 780, I have to make it. It doesn't work. You still have to put your effort to write the essays and get your recommendations, etc. And that has to be good as well.
Yeah, like you said, ISB is looking for leaders, and it's not always the genius, the smartest person in the room who is the best leader, right? So great advice there. And do you have any last tips for applicants on how they can improve their chances of success?
Okay, one of the things after reading as many applications as I have, okay, the GMAT test and the application are two different issues, right? So what I find very often happening is people spend all their time preparing for the GMAT, and they take the GMAT, and sometimes they push that GMAT to an extent where it's just done a week before the application deadline. So they have really not spent enough time on the application. So in spite of a very strong GMAT, you have a very poor application. Okay, and then they wonder, why did I get rejected? The best way to do it is spend some time. I mean, you don't need to spend too much time on the application. Our application portal is open. Once you create a login and a password, you can visit it as many times as you want. Okay, you can edit everything as many times as you want. So my advice to them is, yes, continue devoting time to the GMAT test, because you need to get a good score at the end of it, right? But spend about at least once or twice a week looking over your essays, looking over all the other stuff that you enter out there, so that you get a good GMAT score. You also have a good application simultaneously, and boom, you're ready to apply. And you're not scrambling at the end of getting a GMAT score to put everything in within, let's say, 5 days and send in the application. So my advice to people would be really, keep both of them, devote adequate time to both. And that's what gives a really good, balanced application.
Yes. And it sounds like the interview plays quite an important role in your admissions decisions. And
yes, this does.
And the interviews are held by the ISB admissions staff and alumni, correct?
Right. Yes.
And so would you give any advice there in terms of the interview on how candidates can prepare for that interview and really come across as belonging to a school like ISB?
Okay. And see, one of the things that we do, from an interview standpoint, is first, the interviewer will not know your GMAT, the candidate's GMAT score and academic score. We keep that aside so that there is no bias uh, as a result of the GMAT or the academic score. So that's one bias we have kind of eliminated completely. Uh, our preliminary evaluation, yes, I finally take the call. I and a few other associate directors take the final call. But a lot of our current students do the very preliminary evaluation of the application, which is an online portal. There, the name and the application number of the candidate is kept hidden. So when a person evaluates, he doesn't know whose application is being evaluated. So we kind of get that bias also eliminated on that side. Okay. So to that extent, we have eliminated these two biases. As far as the interview itself is concerned, it's predominantly based on what is there in your application in terms of what you've said you've achieved. So we would typically go into depth in terms of you've said you achieved X, Y, Z. Can you take us through what are the kind of actions you took? Why do you think it is an achievement in the first place? And things like that. What are the kind of challenges you faced? Why do you think there were challenges? Who were the biggest naysayers? How did you overcome the naysayers? So essentially, we try to get at what that person has said in his essays. And if, for instance, if a person says, I'm an exceptionally good problem solver, so we can on the fly give him a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so it all depends. See, what we really do is from the entire application, we would try and identify one or two strengths typically, and we would ask questions centered around those strengths. We do not kind of probe on weaknesses. What's your weakness? Why is it a weakness? No. That's a strict no. We do not talk about weaknesses unless the candidate himself brings it up. It's complete no to talk about weaknesses. We will only be questioning him on strengths. And typically it's not a stress interview. So it's a nice little conversation for about 25 minutes and that's it. And then we evaluate that person on that strength. So if he has demonstrated that strength in the application, to what extent that is validated in the interview, and we say, okay, he has demonstrated to a large extent, less extent, and so on.
And I'm just curious, why is there that focus on strengths and a no, as you say, on weaknesses? I think that's a really interesting approach to the interviews.
One of the things, the point is, so long as you concentrate on strengths, okay, the interview is also more comfortable. So you can keep at weaknesses, and I can tell you one thing, the interview will go downhill from beginning to end. I mean, that's why are we talking about strength? See, ultimately, we are recruiters, and even recruiters at the end of the day want to see only strengths. And whether he has the ability to overcome those weaknesses. I mean, what has he done in the past? I mean, I have read some exceptionally good essays where the optional essay where he says, listen, this is the major failure I had, but I recognize that this was the reason why I failed. And these are the actions that I took to overcome that. That shows an exceptional amount of maturity for a person to accept his weakness, right? Which was there and what has been done to overcome that. So just harping on the weakness right through 25 minutes, I mean, it neither helps us nor the candidate. And at the end of it, he goes out with a feeling of being let down. So we don't want to do that.
If we could switch to talking about financing now. So I know the tuition for ISB is roughly $40,000 US a year, and not that much more for the rest of other expenditures, food and books and laptops and so forth.
In fact, the total expenditure is roughly around 40.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so recommended budget, total expenditure.
It'll be about 41,000 USD.
And this includes the exchange opportunities your students have to go abroad?
Yes, because in the exchange opportunity, the only thing that the student has to fund is the stay at the exchange, whichever university school he's going to, and the travel expenditure. The fee is neutral because for every exchange we have a student from that school coming here. Okay, so the tuition has been mutually paid up, right? He has paid his tuition there, and our student has paid his tuition here. So you just exchange, and it is kind of fee neutral. The only thing, you have to pay your incidental expenses, stay, etc.
Okay, and is it very difficult to get those exchange opportunities, like a very arduous application process?
As a matter of fact, it's not very arduous at all. Um, the yes, we assign the exchange also happens through the bidding process. In our case, so we have 4,000 bid points given to each student at the beginning of the year, and that 4,000 is to be used for exchange. It is to be used for electives as well. So you need to kind of figure out for yourself what is more important, the exchange or the elective. So there is a constant trade-off at ISB, and that's another learning in itself, to figure out what others are bidding for the same thing, okay? And if I need to get it, what do I bid to definitely get it?
And what percentage of your class gets scholarships? And could you let us know what your average amounts are?
Okay, if you look at scholarships, about 15% of our class gets scholarships of some kind from ISB. The scholarship amounts vary from, okay, I'll have to kind of convert that into US dollars. Okay, let me put it in rupees. It's about, the highest is about ₹1,000,000. And the lowest, I mean, the other is about 5. It's 2 steps. It's either ₹500,000 or ₹1,000,000. Okay, and the merit scholarships are decided by the admissions committee itself at the time of giving out the offers. Okay, and for the need-based scholarship, there is a need-based scholarship essay which the person has to write, justifying the need, and also has to support that with the family income details. So the admissions committee every year sets a bar that everybody who gets admitted and whose need is established by that essay and whose family income is below that bar will get ₹500,000 as the scholarship. So the need-based scholarship essay is not used as a part of the evaluation. We get to the need-based essay only after the admission committee first takes a decision on who to admit. Once that admit list is known, from that list we pick up those who have applied for a need-based scholarship, and then apply the criteria and give whoever is within the bar that ₹500,000. So that's the two essential scholarships that we have, and about 15% of our class at the moment get, and we want to keep increasing that because we do recognize that that's one of our weak points, if I might call it. But for an Indian student, there are financing options from 9 banks in India for Indian students that's available. You can take a loan for the entire amount and repayment over a period of 7 to 15 years.
Fantastic. And those scholarships are also available for international students as well?
Absolutely. Yes. These are available for international students as well. On those, we don't discriminate between an international and a domestic. If the person has the merit, he will get it, whether he is a domestic or an international student.
Now, if we could talk about careers, which is, I saved the best for last. So I'm sure that you are flooded with applications from India. And I'm sure those applicants know kind of what the reputation of ISB is in India and getting jobs. So I don't think we need to talk about that. But for international applicants, right, who are concerned about a few things. One, of course, getting a job after graduating from ISB. The second is the international mobility of that degree, right? So say I apply, I come to India, but I really want to work in China, or I want to work back home in the US. What can you tell graduates about, the reputation of ISB, both in India to get jobs and abroad?
Okay, India, there's no problem. Okay, there is recognition of that degree in India. Every company in India recognizes this. But an interesting fact, is we have about a 5,200 strong alumni. Roughly about 25% of that alumni group today is not in India. They are actually working abroad. Okay. Across, I mean, you name the country, there are about 30 different countries, 30, 40 countries where ISB alumni are present. Okay. So obviously there is a kind of a recognition for this degree wherever they go. And incidentally, we have a faculty member now who's who graduated from us back in 2003, went on to do a PhD from Wharton, and he is now joined us back as a faculty. So obviously, Wharton recognizes the fact that this degree is valid. Okay. So that's one part of it. And if you look at the kind of companies, you take the who's who across the world, they recruit at ISB. If you look at the consulting companies like McKinsey, BCG, BD Parthenon, Booz, Deloitte, etc., they all are very large recruiters out here. You take the technology companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc., also recruit. And you talk about SAP, Oracle, all of them. And plus the Indian IT organizations like Cognizant and Tata Consulting Services, Infosys, etc. All these are pretty big recruiters year on year. So recruitment from that standpoint is not much of a problem. But yes, if you look at the international students so far, you see, the real issue is which country they want to get back to. So see, the point is, with just 2 or 3% international, it's difficult to kind of say if there are just 2 Americans out there, how do we get an American company flying all the way down to recruit them? So they are pretty much, but we can connect them to American companies which have operations in India, and then get them connected through that. And we are pretty strong on pharma as well, by the way. Novartis, Pfizer, and a whole lot of other pharmaceutical companies too, who recruit at ISB every year.
And it's so unlike a lot of other countries, maybe like China or Spain, do graduates have to speak the local Indian dialect to, improve their job opportunities, or is that not an issue?
Not at all. All the interviews out here are in English. They don't need to know English though.
Yeah.
So they don't need to know the local dialect at all. Okay. So the kind of roles that people are going into, it's English.
If we could take it down to make it a little bit more concrete in terms of visas, say a candidate wants to stay in India, does he or she have to apply for some sort of work visa, or with the student visa, can they stay for 4 months or something?
They can stay for some time with the student visa. Maybe depends on what kind of visa has been issued, because some of these visas are issued for very specific time duration, so you can't exceed that time duration. But if you get a job, the company can sponsor you for that visa, and that's not very difficult to get, because at the kind of levels at which people are going, it's not very difficult to get a visa if they want to. But funny kind of rule is that if you get a job in India and you have a student visa, okay, to convert that to a work visa, you will necessarily have to go back to your home country and come back. I mean, that's one of those easy Indian kind of a rule, which I don't know, but every time that's what happens. So yes, the company will give you an offer letter which says that you've been given this offer. So basis that, we'll have to convert that to a work visa.
Yeah, and having worked in the career advancement services for ISB, can you highlight maybe 1 or 2 just activities that really help students in a 1-year MBA program, which is of course much shorter and things are accelerated, land their sort of target careers post MBA?
Okay, so we do a lot of things. There are 2 distinct parts to the career services. The one part is the part which does the corporate relationship. So We have a full-fledged corporate relationship team at Careers, which is located in different cities in India. We have uh, CR people in Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, and Hyderabad. So they're actually meeting corporates all the time. So that is to kind of present them the kind of profile of current classes so that you encourage them to come to campus for placements. The other is what we call the learning and development, and I was part of the learning and development, where we take the individual candidates through the whole process of searching for a career. So, in terms of guiding them through their resumes and resume review, okay, that's one aspect. We help them with talk to them one-on-one. These are all long conversations one-on-one with each of those 770, by the way, and finding out what their strengths are, what they want to do, and whether what they want to, the kind of career they're aspiring to, is kind of in line with what their past experience has been, what they are doing currently at ISB, and if we need to say, okay, please, instead of this course, take that course. That might kind of help you better. And those kind of advice is provided by the L&D team. In addition, we all invariably, if the kind of aspiration is kind of difficult to achieve, I mean, we say your past experience and your experience, your qualification ideally suits this kind of a role and this kind of organization. Why didn't you try that as well as a plan B? Okay, so we give them certain backup options as well. So, okay, this is your plan A. This is what you need to do to achieve plan A. That doesn't work out. Here's a plan B. So, but this is a high involvement kind of a role where you have to be constantly speaking to students right through the year. From the day they get in, I mean, this activity starts. They join in April, somewhere in the middle of May we start on. Give them about a month's time to settle down, and then our job starts.
I saw the stats. You've helped, at least in the last class, over 50% of your class switched both industry and function. I'm just wondering, how, because that's quite an impressive statistic, and how ISB was able to help its students do that in a one-year program without an internship.
See, one of the things that we have replaced the internship really with what we call an experiential learning program, where students actually work with companies solving some problem of theirs. I mean, it's like a consulting engagement, which they predominantly do from campus, but there are enough opportunity to visit the company. So that takes about 2 terms, so 6 plus 6, 12 weeks. Starting from sometime in mid-August or in July till about December. So students then get to meet with a lot of companies as a part of this process. So that is one area which has helped them get the kind of skill sets required for the kind of change that they want. That is one. The other thing we have noticed is, by and large, companies are recruiting for skill sets. So what we, as a part of the resume review, really do is, how do you project skills? That's the important aspect of L&D. How do you project skills based on your past experience? What are the skills you have demonstrated consistently over a period of time? So we kind of help them develop their resume, which would kind of bring out those skill sets, and then match those skill sets with what the recruiter wants. And we have kind of, but having said that, you must realize that about 30% of our students really get into consulting. You would also notice that. Now, consulting is completely background agnostic. They're not really looking for people from, say, finance or marketing or whatever it is. They're only looking at some broad-based skills. That's one reason why there is such a high percentage of people who make shifts.
What is the best way for potential candidates to contact actual, students and alumni of the program and really understand and learn from their experience?
Contacting current students, the best thing to do is write into the admissions team, pgp@isb.edu, we'll connect you to the Kannan student. We will do that with the alumni also. So what we have is, we have an alumni relations office out here, and any contacting alumni, we route it through the alumni services. So because the alumni services is in contact with alumni across batches, across classes, across cities, etc., etc. So we will connect you through them. That's the best.
And is there anything else about the ISB PGP program that you just wish more international candidates knew about?
The one thing that I would expect them to know is that we are kind of top ranked. We are on par in terms of the education and the learning that you can get at any other place. Okay, that's one thing I would definitely like people to know.
And finally, could you leave us with 3 words to describe the program to sum up the ISB PGP?
3 words I would use. One is very rigorous.
That's 2 words.
Okay, rigorous. Let's rigorous. Okay.
Yeah.
Contemporary. Outstanding.
Great. Fantastic choice. Thank you so much for being on the show, Kannan, and we hope to see you again soon.
Sure. Thanks a lot for doing this for us.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.